Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of India's biggest fintech players, Groww. We're going to deconstruct how their unique culture isn't just some fluffy mission statement, it's actually the secret ingredient that builds their code and really drives their success.
So let's just dive right in. Have you ever stopped to wonder how an app that handles millions, literally millions, of investments gets built? The answer isn't just about clever algorithms or the fanciest new tech stack. At Groww, it's about a unique culture that shapes every single technical decision they make.
To really get what makes Groww's tech tick, we have to start at the very beginning with their foundation, their engineering philosophy. And it all boils down to one core idea: decentralized autonomy.
See, they've basically thrown out the traditional, siloed corporate playbook. Instead, they use something they call pods. Think of these as small, agile, cross-functional teams that operate like little mini startups inside the company. So a pod for stocks or mutual funds has everyone it needs: engineers, designers, product managers, to own that feature completely, from the first idea to the final launch.
And this kind of autonomy? Well, it demands a totally different kind of developer. They're not just grabbing tickets from a backlog and coding away. No, they're expected to be product engineers. And that means they have to be deeply involved in the why behind what they're building, thinking just like an owner of the feature. When you look at this comparison, the difference is just night and day. A traditional engineer's job is to execute tickets. But a Groww product engineer, they're in there collaborating on why they're building something. They critique the UX flows, and their success isn't just about shipping bug-free code. It's measured by the actual impact on the user. It's a huge shift in mindset.
Okay, so how does this whole philosophy of autonomy and ownership actually play out in their architecture? Let's see how this foundation gets translated into real code, starting with a massive problem that pretty much every fast-growing company runs into.
As Groww got bigger and bigger, their single, monolithic codebase became this giant bottleneck. I mean, you've got all these autonomous pods trying to ship features at the same time, and it just led to slow builds, tangled code, and the one thing engineers absolutely dread: merge conflict hell. So their solution was to completely rethink their front end. They moved to an architecture called micro frontend. This basically means their web app is really a collection of smaller, independent applications, which allows each pod to develop and deploy its own section without tripping over everybody else.
But, breaking things apart can create a really messy developer experience. And Groww solved this with a pretty brilliant idea they call the one-port strategy. Instead of making developers run a bunch of local servers that just drain their laptops, they fetch all the stable parts of the app from the cloud. This means a developer only needs to run the one specific piece of code they're actually working on.
And the impact was huge. This one elegant strategy made their hot module replacement, that's the tool that shows you code changes live without a full reload, a whopping 3 times faster. That is a massive win for developer productivity. They also automated routing. So instead of hard-coding URL paths, which would create all these fragile dependencies between teams, they built a custom script. During the build, it just scans each micro frontend and generates a page map that the main app uses to find its way around. This means zero coupling. No team depends on another. It's total autonomy, just like the philosophy said.
All right, let's switch gears and talk mobile, because this is where Groww's pragmatism and their absolutely ruthless focus on performance really shines. For them, performance isn't just a nice-to-have, it's the law.
They have this strict set of performance rules for their React Native developers. Just take a look at this example. A really common pattern is to just remove a component from the screen if it's not needed. But at Groww, the standard is to just make it invisible by changing its opacity. Why? Because completely removing and then re-adding a component is a super expensive operation that can cause lag and jank.
But their biggest mobile challenge was, by far, financial charting. Trying to push thousands of data points from the JavaScript side of React Native over to the native UI created this massive traffic jam on what's called the JS bridge. The result? You guessed it, laggy, frustrating charts.
So they made a really bold decision. For this one critical feature, they just bypassed React Native's rendering layer completely. They went and built a custom, high-performance charting engine directly in native Kotlin that draws everything onto a single canvas. And the results are just stunning. We're talking buttery smooth, 60 frames per second, even on lower-end phones. This perfectly demonstrates their performance-first, tooling-second mindset. They'll use the right tool for the job, even if it means they have to build it themselves from scratch. Of course, a slick UI and fast performance don't mean a thing if the financial data isn't accurate and in real time. This is where trust is either built or completely broken. Financial apps are constantly having to do something called reconciliation, making sure a user's order, the exchange's confirmation, and their account ledger all match up perfectly. This used to be a manual nightmare, so Groww automated this whole process using an in-process database called DuckDB, which is this lightweight tool that's perfect for running complex queries to find any mismatches instantly.
And when you talk about delivering live market data, the scale is just immense. Their system uses a high-performance messaging system called NATS, and it handles about 35,000 updates every single second.
So when you put all of this together, what does it all add up to? What's the big takeaway from looking inside Groww's engineering machine? Well, it all comes down to context. This quote from the source material really just sums it all up. Technology choices aren't made in some kind of vacuum. The move to micro front ends was a direct response to how their organization was scaling. The custom native charts, that was a direct response to the performance limits of React Native.
And that's really the bottom line. Their culture of autonomy and ownership isn't just a management philosophy. It directly, tangibly shapes the code they write. It creates an architecture that is purpose-built for speed, for performance, and for scale.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. Take a look at your own work. How does the way your team or your entire company is organized, how does that actually influence the technology that you build every single day?